Is Jenna here? There she is, right in the Jenna spot. Amazing. Jenna Ellis, the director of the Dobson Policy Center, the author of the legal basis for a moral constitution, and a birthday girl, right? Is tomorrow your birthday?
Yeah. Tomorrow is.
Happy birthday. We're glad we would have brought you a cake, but none of us can do anything. So we have no capability to make a cake.
Okay, well, the birthday wish is much appreciated. Thanks.
All right. Well, listen, let's talk about this thing. You've written an article basically saying that Trump wins just by bringing up the birthright citizenship idea. This is the idea that no matter who you are, break into the country, have a baby, the baby's a citizen, right?
Yeah, and that's really obviously a legal fraud. And the fact that we have been perpetuating this policy through really misconstruing the language of the 14th Amendment, it really is a great thing for President Trump in the context of the immigration debate to bring to the forefront. And what I think is so fascinating, Andrew, is that the left and really everyone is debating the merits of this hypothetical executive order without any language actually being put forward. And we've seen historically, just in the last 2 years, that related to immigration, the left always has such a memory lapse because the travel ban executive order was a total win for Trump. And then even the executive order on the child separation at the border, that was manifestly constitutional because all that President Trump did was urge Congress to act.
No.
And so he has wide latitude here if even an executive order will exist sometime down the road.
So, okay, so it's an election, kind of gambit. He's putting it out there to make sure people are thinking about what he wants them thinking about. Is it, you can't overturn, I mean, even if the 14th Amendment is a little unclear, there's something about, what is the language in there about you have to be born under the jurisdiction of the United States? But
yeah. Under the jurisdiction thereof. And that becomes the question, Drew, that really the Supreme Court hasn't answered. And we can definitely talk about that too. But I think your question was going to be, can President Trump really overturn this by executive order? And it depends. Because through the INA, the Immigration and Naturalization Act, Congress has really deferred a lot of their congressional authority to the president. I don't think that anyone really is arguing that the president can just unilaterally create law. That would obviously be unconstitutional. But what he could do in the context of stopping some of these people from manipulating the immigration system, it really will depend on the language and then how it might be interpreted by now a more conservative Supreme Court.
But now, I mean, it's just hard for me to imagine even this Supreme Court saying, yeah, this executive order overrides the Constitution, or even if the intention is unclear. If they passed a law, if Congress passed a law saying the 14th Amendment doesn't apply to you, basically, if you broke into the country, do you think the court would go for that?
I do. And definitely an executive order can't override the Constitution. But if there is a law that is consistent with the Constitution through Congress, I think they can do it by statute. The issue here, and with all due respect to the ACLU, this is not a question that has been settled. In fact, the only case that's on record that even sort of touches this issue of what the 14th Amendment actually means and if it applies to illegal aliens was a case that's called the United States versus Wong Kim Ark. And that was back in 1898. So actually pretty shortly after the 14th Amendment was passed. And I was actually reading this case this morning because I'm a legal nerd and I do that. And there is a really interesting piece of this case because it dealt with parents who were from China, but they had permanent legal status here in the United States and then had a child. Okay. So they had that relationship. And so the court hasn't ever answered the question, what about a child of illegal immigrants? But what it says in the footnote, which this is what we call dicta in a case, meaning the court didn't directly say this is a binding opinion, but it discussed the conversation. And in this, it's talking about the fundamental principle of common law with regard to English nationality at birth was talking about obedience, faith, or power of the king. And so the principle that embraced all persons within the king's allegiance and subject to his protection, that's what in the jurisdiction thereof means. So this is the interesting footnote. It says children born in England, such aliens were therefore natural born subjects. But the children born within the realm of foreign ambassadors or the children of alien enemies born during and within their hostile occupation of a part of the king's dominions were not natural born subjects because they were not born within the allegiance, the obedience, or the power, or as it would be said at this day, within the jurisdiction of the king. So I think that,
yeah.
Yeah, so I think that that's language that a future Supreme Court could go back to and say, this is what really in the jurisdiction there means, and it excludes children of hostile occupants of the United States.
And I mean, then there would become a question of whether you could call somebody who had broken into the country a hostile occupant, I guess.
Well, and that would be fairly obvious, because if you don't have a legal status, I mean, look at the caravan. That's an invasion. If you come here and you break into the country without legal status, our immigration system already treats you that way, absent if you have amnesty, if you're here as a refugee and you qualify, but then that still gives you that legal status. So if you're here without legal status, it's just like if someone breaks in to my house without having a landlord-tenant relationship, an invitee status, a guest status, then they're here illegally.
That's really interesting, Jenna. Thank you so much for coming on. Have a wonderful birthday.
Thank you so much for having me. Always great to see you.
We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks.
That's really interesting. But again, a interesting legal issue, obviously an election gambit. You know, Trump hasn't even issued anything. It's just, he just put the words out there and they panic and get hysterical.